Hello again and welcome back to the Intermediate Inforum warm-up class. We're now in week 4 already. That's gone really quickly. And today we have a little bit of difficult grammar, but don't worry, there are plenty of chances for you to practice this with the practice activities after you watch the video, okay? So today we're going to learn a little bit about the past perfect tense and then also reported speech. But let's start with past perfect. Now the past perfect is formed with had plus what we call V3, which is just the same as your past participle, okay? And we use it to show that one past action or event happened before another past action. So if you look at this example and the timeline, you can see how it works. I got to work, this happened in the past, and realized I'd left the stove on, okay? This part here is past perfect because this action actually happened before this past action, okay? You can see here, leave the stove on first, later I got to work, okay? So past perfect here to say that this action happened before this one, both in the past. Okay, just another example. I'd had a rough day at work, so I stopped at the pub on the way home. Again, this action, the one in past perfect, happened before the other past action, okay? Okay, now we can also use past perfect in the continuous form, which we create like this. We use had plus been plus an ing verb, okay? And when we do this, similar to when we use the present perfect, it's because the duration, how long the action took place, is important, okay? So we use it to show that an action happened over a period of time, duration, before another past action. For example, I had been drinking all afternoon, so I decided not to drive home. All afternoon is important here, so I'm using the continuous form. Okay, that's it for past perfect. And next we'll talk about reported speech. Okay, so now let's move on to talk about reported speech. Now, reported speech is basically just when we tell other people what someone else has said, okay? Now, with reported speech, it's a little bit complicated. So there's a few things I'm going to explain to you, but it will take a bit of practice. So of course, don't forget to do your activities after watching, okay? Okay, so reported speech. We can do this in 2 ways. There's 2 ways that we can tell other people what someone else said. We can directly quote them, which we call direct speech. She said, quotation mark, I read a good book recently. Now this is exactly what she said. It's okay to do this, but it's not very common because it sounds a little bit unnatural. So what we do is we use reported speech, okay? And it's like we're summarizing what the person has said. She said she had read a good book recently. So you'll notice a few things are different. Obviously, this subject is different because someone else said it, okay? And the tense of the verb is different. She said she had read a good book recently. Now with reported speech, we basically move a tense backwards when we report what someone said. And the reason we do this is because we're not really sure if this has changed or not between the time we spoke to them and the time that we report what they said, okay? So here's a little quick chart of the different tense changes you need to do with reported speech. So if someone speaks in present simple, we change to past simple. Past simple changes to past perfect, as you can see in this example. Okay, present perfect also changes to past perfect. Okay, present continuous becomes past continuous. Is, am, or are going to becomes was or were going to. Will or won't becomes would or wouldn't. And can and can't becomes could or couldn't. Okay, those are the main ones that you need to know at this stage. All right, don't worry about anything else. Except for this. Okay, so I just want to show you something so that you can notice a little bit of a difference in how we report speech. Most of the time we need to do these tense changes, but sometimes we don't have to. If you look at these sentences, you might notice something, okay? This is what we call a reporting verb. Now that's a word that means something like said or told. In this sentence here, sentence 1, he says he wants to go on a diet. In this example, I'm using a present tense verb for the reporting verb, says. So in this sentence, I can keep the tense the same, okay? But most of the time, we need to use past tense reporting verbs. Sentence 2, he said he wanted, I'm doing the tense change here, yeah, to go on a diet, okay? So remember, this tense change is for when we use past tense reporting verbs. But we do that most of the time because usually we report on something that's already happened, don't we? Yeah? Okay, so lastly, let's quickly look at questions. There are 2 types of questions in English which you know by now. One type is a yes or no question, which means we answer easily yes or no, okay? For example, can you come to class early? Is the direct quote. The reported quote, she asked if. Okay, we use if to report yes or no questions. She asked if I could come to class early. Now, when we make questions, we normally invert the subject and verb. We switch the order, but we don't do this with reported questions because this is not a question anymore, is it? Okay? And lastly, other questions, usually starting with words like what, when, where, why, okay? For example, what is the time? We say she asked, we have a question word, and then subject and verb. She asked what the time was. In both of these examples, I'm still doing the tense shift, but I'm going back to using a sentence structure because I'm not asking a question, I'm reporting a question. Okay, and that's all for today's lesson. See you next time.